Okay, so I'm just taking a break from my studies, and I thought I'd use it as an opportunity to sort of clear some thoughts that have gone through my head. In the last couple of days, I've been coming across like flat Earth theory stuff in my algorithms. Like the algorithms just sort of steamrolled with it, snowballed with it. Um, I found flat Earth theory to be one of those interesting topics where it actually has got something going for it, and that's kind of why it gains ground and snowballs into something bigger. Um, but to most people, it sounds ridiculous, and they just sort of can't believe that this thing, as a theory, takes off, or as a conspiracy theory can take off. Um, so yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like you got to be like, are you serious? Like the Earth's flat? Like, how can you believe that? But that curiosity can sometimes lead others into looking into it. Like, how can someone believe that? So I'm going to look into it myself, try and be open minded, and look into it. And I did that, and yeah, I did think, yeah, it's got a lot going for it. In fact, that at one point I was almost convinced myself that, yeah, I think we've been lied to, and that the Earth is flat. And I remember I was trying to explain to people how it worked. I had a CD, like a compact disc on the ground, and I was trying to explain to them, how it would work. Trying to show them that model and visualize, get them to visualize the it's a geocentric model, not the heliocentric. Um, so there's a couple of issues I've got with flat Earth theory, and I'm actually putting this video out there for the flat Earth theorists that are really worth their salt. You know what I mean? Like, there are some intelligent people in the flat Earth community, and I'm sure they are smarter than me. But they still believe this stuff, and I'm questioning it. So here we go. Maybe you can help clear some things up that haven't quite made sense yet in my mind. And I'd assume if it's occurred to me, it's occurred to other people. And here's an opportunity for the flat earthers that have really gained some respect within that like community. Explain this for me, and then by explaining it for me, you hopefully will strengthen your position. So I'm not trying to shoot down your theory at all. I'm giving an opportunity to strengthen your position. Um, and bearing that in mind, there may be some things that you can't explain. That's fair. So anyway, one is gravity and density. So one of the like contentious theories in flat Earth is gravity. It's like some areas of the flat Earth theory, like some corners of flat Earth theory, at least. I'm not sure if all flat earthers believe this, but at least some do, that gravity isn't real, and that what actually pins us to the ground is density. And one of the examples that they have shown, this is just one example. I'm not saying that this is what this hinges on, but one example that they have given is they've shown helium balloons that will float up, and you know they'll say, it's gravity's not strong enough to pin down this balloon, right? Like, it can't sort of overcome this balloon, you know. And that's fair. I would go as far as to say that density is a constant force that doesn't change, just like gravity. It's sort of like, when I was a kid, I was told that gravity will eventually beat everything. Like, eventually gravity wins. Like, you can design an object to hold up and fight off gravity for a certain amount of time, even potentially thousands of years, but eventually gravity will have its way. And that's sort of what I was brought up to believe. And I believe that density is the same thing, and that actually density overrides gravity. And that's a fair point. If something is light enough, surrounded by something heavy enough, for example, a ball inside a swimming pool, the density is going to override gravity. The gravitational force isn't enough to force that, because you got to understand, gravity's forcing both the water and the ball down and everything sort of has to take its place and settle out, and energy has to form its equilibrium. Same reason why if you opened up a container in a vacuum, it's going to and it's going to equalize, sort of thing. So that makes sense, right? Like density is obviously a very governing factor in where things like layer and level themselves in relation to like what is up and what is down. But I don't think that they've been able to prove that it's the only force doing that. And I'll tell you why I think that, and hopefully a flat earther can explain this for me. So why is it that an object still will still fall in a vacuum chamber at the same speed also, assuming it's an aerodynamic object? Like obviously a feather won't fall at the same speed, but assuming all aerodynamics are accounted for, the object still falls at the same speed inside a vacuum chamber. Why is that? Is that because it's, still just the most densest object in the vacuum? Or, maybe you can explain that one for me. But either way, what's pulling it down? See that, like, I still don't understand, like, if density is the reason why that helium balloon is floating above the atmosphere, well, then what's forcing the atmosphere to stay below the balloon? So even though density, I do think is certainly a contributing factor to the way things work, I still think gravity's part of that equation. Anyway, so that's that. Hopefully you can explain that a bit better for me. Why do objects fall in a vacuum chamber? The other one is planes. So I know that flat earthers have used planes to prove their theory quite well, in fact, really. Like they've pointed out some interesting things, like when pilots first took to the sky in mass numbers, apparently a lot of them were surprised that the way everything appeared was that the highest thing was the horizon, and directly below them appeared to be really far away, and they thought because the Earth is round that it would be opposite. Like what is directly below you would appear to be closest, and the further you went out, the more it would sort of appear to fall away. But the horizon doesn't do that; it sits at eye level the whole time you're flying, and that's a really interesting thing. Like I get why that they hinge upon that so much. And if you look into their explanations for that, you'll understand why that's such important information for their theory, like for the flat Earth theory, because it doesn't really make sense. And on 3D models, if you pull yourself up off of a sphere, it does appear to fall away, and it's only on a flat plane, on a 3D model on a flat plane. As you raise your altitude, the horizon stays with you. So the out as far as you can see stays at eye level. So they have shown that in 3D models. Fair enough. But then they've also gone, one step further to sort of disprove it even more, is to sort of say, well, like snipers have to account for the Coriolis effect and planes don't. And then they've shown these 3D models of planes trying to land on rotating spheres, and the plane can't land because it just never has like this still ground to land on. And because pilots and planes don't account for the Coriolis effect, they said what they've done is they've modeled a plane trying to land on a rotating sphere that didn't account for the Coriolis effect, and of course it just fucking crashes as it like collides with this moving like land, and that's all taking into account just the Coriolis effect, straight on with this rotating mass, But it doesn't take into account the atmosphere at all. Like it didn't take into account the difference between a wing and a bullet. Like a plane, the way a plane flies, especially when it's landing and it's starting to slow down, like it's really all about like what's stopping it from falling out of the sky completely at that low speed is lift. So the wing is an aerofoil. It's forcing air, over the top at a different speed than it is under the bottom, and this is gaining lift, and that's what causes a plane to fly. So a plane is utilizing the atmosphere, and the lower the lower the altitude, the higher the air density, the more lift you can get. And the higher you go, the less lift you can get. and that's why planes do actually have a limit to their altitude. Not just that. There are other factors like how much air can an engine actually get. But anyway, lift is a huge factor. So planes utilize lift, and they're utilizing the atmosphere as their medium for travel. Like it's in the same way that you're pushing off the ground, the plane is pushing off the air. But bullets are different. Bullets are essentially, if bullets had a mind, then their goal would be to avoid the atmosphere. Like they're not gaining lift, they're trying to avoid lift. The last thing you want your bullet doing is catching the wind and just flying off up into the air. Your bullet needs to stay true. So your bullet is designed to cut through the air and avoid the atmosphere. And for that reason, it's not traveling with, it's not like a fly that's traveling around inside your car cabin with you. It's just totally not like that. It's much more like the object that's outside the car that's traveling alongside you. It's cutting it. Obviously when the Earth rotates, the atmosphere is part of that. It's sort of all going along for the ride, and the plane just, it's all part of the ride. In the same way that a fly can land on your steering wheel, and fly backwards and forwards inside the cabin while you're cruising down the road at 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, is the same reason, why a plane can land on a runway, and, a bullet is not the same thing. But flat earthers have utilized, this information to sort of point out that the Coriolis effect somehow needs to be accounted for by snipers who are firing a bullet at ridiculously high speeds. But yet at this low speed, which it should be even harder to do, planes don't have to do that. And and it's just so detrimental to your own camp, honestly. Like if you guys really care about like people believing your theory, you need to address these things. Like anyone with a logical mind is going to start, hold on a second, planes and bullets aren't the same thing. Why would a sniper and a pilot need to account for the Coriolis effect in the same way? Despite all the other good evidence that you've utilized planes to prove your theory for, like the flight paths, like look at the flight paths, man. Is there actually any planes that you can fly from South Africa right across the southern hemisphere to Australia to New Zealand, or do you have to go north? And if you have to go north, then why is that? Why was that emergency landing in Alaska and not just straight to California? For the one from Sydney, the emergency landing from Sydney to LA, and they had to emergency land in Alaska because that's on the way to California. So that'll make sense. That'll make sense, man. You've got heaps going for your theory. You really do, but you got to address some shit. There was some other things too. There was at least one other thing, and I just can't think what it is now. But the main one for me, and I feel like if you guys can address this, you would, really help your theory. Vacuum chambers. Why do objects still fall inside a vacuum? At the same speed, basically. Like why doesn't it sort of change? And the plane thing, like you've got to address this Coriolis effect thing, come up with another explanation as to why gravity isn't real. It's all about density, yet planes can land, yet bullets do need to take into account this Coriolis effect. Like this all needs to be rethought out and hashed out, unless I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, then please tell me, Thank you.